Yeah, I'm really pleased that you've put me last to solve all the problems, and apparently I'm going to do it personally. So
Great, yeah.
great. Very interesting talks, and I've got about 5 minutes to wrap it all up. So my address here is going to be about solutions. They've already been presaged a little bit by the previous two talks, but I'd like to reassure you that doom and gloom is not here to stay. This is a rather famous article by some otherwise extremely eminent scientists who rashly predicted that we'd run out of fish in 2048. And it's based on some really difficult interpretive science and is not going to happen. The situation with world's fisheries, however, is, as portrayed by the previous two speakers, not great. We've got a world current capture of around about 80 million tons with a value of about $70 billion. This hasn't actually changed for the last 15 years. We've been at this level. We know, and in fact, Heather made reference to this, the value of illegal fishing estimated to be 10 to 25 billion, some other estimates up in the 20 billions. Overfishing and underperforming fisheries. You fish a fish stock too hard, it doesn't perform as well as it should do. We perhaps are losing $30 to $50 billion from the World Bank and estimates. Yimin Yi works at the World at FAO. Discarding, very difficult to get global estimates on this. The last ones were made around about 10 to 15 years ago, again by FAO. The figure on the right is the trends in sustainability or non-sustainability that is part of the FAO's once every 2-year publication of the state of world fisheries. And the figure you should be looking at is the number of overexploited fish, which is this figure. There's one trending up there. I'm not sure if I can get a pointer here. Is that a pointer? Any idea how that works?
Not sure about it.
No, I'm worried it's going to... Yeah, there we go. This one here. So but interestingly on this figure, and this is often quoted as things are going to hell in a handcart, look where we got to by the late 80s, and the trend has been pretty flat but gently increasing ever since then. So by the late 80s, we had already got to a situation we weren't very happy with. But it's not all bad by any means. The two most public indices of fish stock sustainability in the EU and in the USA, they started doing this in the USA around about the late 90s, show gradual but declining trends in the amount of overfished stocks in those countries. This is a very recent publication by some Californian scientists, and what they show is what appears to be the case now. We have a trend in some stocks where it's stabilized. It's nicely stabilized around about the beginning of the mid to the 1990s, with an increasing trend in stocks since around about 2000, and the rest of them are continuing to decline. So we've got a two-speed world, and this is actually entirely the same as we have a two-speed world with everything else we deal with. We have North America, Europe, Oceania, and we're talking Oceania here, we're talking Australia, New Zealand, where things have been turned around. People know the solutions. We've actually known most of these solutions since the mid-80s or earlier, including the issue about MPAs. We've known the solutions. We tried to implement them in around about 1995 with a couple of really important international agreements, and nobody's actually done it. Well, the northern countries and in Europe, North America, and in Oceania have actually been able to turn around some of their fish stocks. The developing world, however, is still out there, and that is our big problem. And this reflects some things that Heather was saying, particularly about developing world. So what is the solution? The Marine Stewardship Council offers one solution. This is a very complex problem. There isn't a single solution, but there are some solutions that we can look at. And it's an interesting feature of, in fact, as getting older, you remember things that happened. And I remember the 1970s, and what was in the 1970s? Everybody was talking about population. For around about the last 25 years, apparently this has been a taboo subject, and yet we're now projecting 9 billion people. That is a hell of a lot of people. We've been at the capacity of world wild capture fisheries for the last 15 years, and it is unrealistic to expect that we'll be able to increase that to really contribute to massive additional food security for those people. What we have to concentrate on is how to recover those stocks that we've got our handles on at the moment. One of the ways to do it is to look at fish in terms of their trade and in terms of you as a consumer and what you can do as a consumer. Fish is the widest traded natural product in the world. We have some 76% of fish that is traded going to the developing world. And most of that is to North America and to Northern Europe. And that's where market-based programs start to come in. So the MSC was constructed in the late 1990s when it became obvious that governments alone were incapable of applying fisheries management regulations on their own. There are too many competing political interests in governments that were making it really, really difficult to get anything implemented. So the idea of creating something like the Marine Stewardship Council, which was created some 4 years after the Forestry Stewardship Council had shown the way, was to harness the idea of single imports, civil society, and consumer power to drive change. We had a very slow start, but it's been increasing since then. This over here is a rather complicated graph with lots of acronyms at the top. This is the number of chain of custody, which is the number of companies that are now processing or handling MSC fish, and that's increased. We've now got 183 fisheries in the program. We've got a number of fisheries that have failed and dropped out, and we've got something like 11% of the total wild caught seafood globally out of that 80 million tons currently in the program. Now, we think that's a lot, but it's only 11%. Market recognition of the MSC logo has increased rapidly in some countries, especially in Northern Europe over the last 2 years. That was two years ago in the UK, 18%. Now we're up to 32%, 31% rather. In Germany, we're up almost to 50% of recognition, and even in places like Australia, which were particularly slow to start off with. The fisheries that are in the MSC program show change. They actually they grow from a position. This is the x-axis here is time, and this is the performance of those fisheries measured by the MSC system. And we get fisheries improving throughout that period of interaction with the program. Some other really good examples. Heather mentioned albatross. We've got some particularly good activity in South Africa, where we've got a southern African hake that is certified. The market draw there is its European market. It used to be selling into Spain, getting really bad prices. Once they got certified, they were able to sell into the German market and then other northern European markets. And collaboration between government, industry, and NGOs, and this is the thing that's been most important about these sorts of programs, is they get people talking together, they get people creating the solutions themselves and believing that they've all got a solution and all won out of it. So instead of being driven down, top down by government, which simply hasn't worked in most places, the solutions are driven bottom up. And we've had very significant reductions in the bycatch of albatross that have been taken in that fishery, and that's some of the success stories that Heather was referring to. We've got quite a lot of developing world fisheries coming into the program. This is the Suriname sea bob fishery, which is a shrimp fishery off Suriname. And before coming into the program, it was a bit of a basket case, and there's a basket here just to show you how that was the case. Thank you. It does help to liven it up about this time. We're going to get questions in a minute that'll make it easier. So they've now got stock assessments. They've got working groups, which include NGOs, other stakeholders, and the fisheries themselves, and they're seeing improvements. Here's another slide about the sorts of improvements. It's not just the MSC that can create these things. There are other actors out there creating change. There's a very interesting bycatch reduction program called the WWF Smart Fishing Initiative. BirdLife International has had a lot of success dealing with albatross. There are government initiatives and there are industry initiatives. This is an example of the bycatch you get from a standard and experimental shrimp trawls, where the experimental shrimp trawl uses pulses of electricity to shake the shrimp off the bottom rather than dragging that big chain through the bottom. And you can see that they get just as much commercial shrimp, but they reduce their bycatch quite considerably here. These sorts of initiatives are being driven by industry, but catalyzed by the demand that consumers make. But where can we go? And this is the challenge that I throw down to people like Heather, who has sort of slightly alternative solutions, is the MSC. We know there's about 79 million tons of catch at the moment, probably another 25% in bycatch and discard, etc. There are, we think we can capture 11%. Our ambition is to capture around about 20, perhaps 28%. But that's 28% of the global world catch. Now, there's a lot left. Anyone with a rudiment of maths can tell you that it's 72% that's left in the ocean. And we think that that's going to be difficult for our program to touch, because our program is really fundamentally based around market demand in the north. What we need to make the program work better is to create market demand in the south, in developing countries. So these programs, the work that we've done now to understand our problem with fisheries in the northern hemisphere needs to be translated to the southern hemisphere, needs to be translated to the developing world. And it needs to be translated in a way that benefits them rather than being imposed from the top, because we didn't find the solutions to our fish problem by top-down imposition. And that's the challenge. We've got challenges with immense, tremendous lack of data for many, many fish stocks and many ocean areas. Even within Europe and North America, 40% or more of the fish stocks that we've got are unassessed. People don't do assessments. Now, that's extraordinary when you think about we've got all the money in the world to spend on these things, but not everybody has. So that's just to wrap up. There are some solutions out there. Let's get down and apply them. Thank you.